Hello and a warm welcome here back at Feeling Terrific. I'm very happy to have a great topic again, but also a great, more than great, partner for this conversation today. The conversation will be around job rotation and how that can change someone's life. So I think I took a little bit of a sneak peek of our conversation, which is coming now. But I hope it's okay, and I hope I pronounced the name correctly, Naksh. So I have Naksh Choudhry with me here today, and she's currently a program manager within the talent acquisition team at ServiceNow. And as already mentioned, we will tackle different topics, but among them, definitely having the focus on job rotation. In ServiceNow, I think there's a different term. It's called bungee.
A bungee. Yep,
So,
that's correct.
so basically, with that being said, thank you for your time, Naksh, and looking forward to have authentic insight.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to talk through my experience, at ServiceNow about the job rotation and getting the conversation around those started.
Perfect. Yeah. So then let's start with a very interesting question in the beginning. Who are you? Maybe you can give us a little bit of context around yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Naksh Choudhry. I am 29 years old and I live in San Francisco, California. Um, Currently, I am back in my old role, which is a talent acquisition role here at ServiceNow. But prior to that, I've done a bunch of roles in the TA world, starting from recruitment to sourcing to research to programs, and then back to, the recruiting sourcing space. So it's a little bit about me.
Perfect. And you also mentioned it a little bit, but maybe from a different perspective, what drives you in general?
I think I've learned this about myself very recently. As I get closer to my 30s, I finally found like what drives me, and I think it's serving others. And that also ties in a lot with where I'm in life right now when it comes to professionally and personally as well. So I think what drives me essentially is serving others.
Yeah, no, that having that mindset is great, and I'm happy for you that you realize that. I mean, it takes a lot of, I would say, courage because you look deep inside yourself, right? So congrats to that.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's really great. Maybe let's talk about attitude. So I think attitude is something which is which cannot be overrated or underrated enough, right? And talked about enough. So I assume you're quite successful at ServiceNow, right? What role does attitude play in your success or in your
Yeah.
basically professional life at ServiceNow? What would you
Yeah,
say?
that's a really great question. I think everything depends on your attitude, essentially, right? Especially in the professional world, it's pretty evident that the way that you want to be perceived is how others will perceive you. And attitude is the denominating factor of that. So if I wake up one day and I want to learn and I'm looking forward to completing tasks on my list, I mean, that depends on my attitude. Whereas if I wake up one day and I'm like, you know what, I don't feel like getting anything done today, I think that's going to kind of trickle down on how much I'm able to essentially check off my list. So attitude has a lot to do with how well you perform in your career and how successful you can be in your professional life as well. Having a positive attitude is essential, but I do recognize that we're all humans. Like, no one's going to wake up every day and be like, I want to get this done, or like, I want to learn today. So having a general, you know, positive attitude is definitely important in the professional world.
Yeah, we will dig deeper into that later on, but maybe from a different angle or different point of view. Do you have an example for us of when your attitude was harmful?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think when I started early in my career and I went directly into the agency world where you had to learn a lot on your own, and you had to learn very quickly to survive in those type of environments. I was very hesitant to learn about the recruiting world because I didn't think I was going to last in this long enough. I thought this is like a stepping stone. I'm going to get into the HR space and then I'll figure my way out of this industry. So when
Mhm.
I got into that first role, I kind of had a crappy attitude. Like I didn't want to learn. And I realized that because of my attitude, I actually wasn't learning. And then when our first quarter um, review came along, I was the last person in my team to have placements, to have job accepts and job offers. And that really hit me. And I recognized at that point that even though this is not something that I want to do today, I still want to be good at it. And at that point in time, I really had to divert my attitude and focus more on the learning piece. And it wasn't until I started doing that that I realized, A, I actually like what I'm doing. And B, I'm learning. Like I will learn based on how much I want to observe this information.
Yeah. So you would say you're a lifelong learner, having a
Yeah,
mindset of this one.
definitely. And I think that has to do with my mindset. I think I only learn when I train my mind into thinking that you need to learn this.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
That
you can talk to me about anything and it'll go over my head.
yeah, but that's really a great perspective. I'm wondering, how did you feel when you realized for yourself that you had to change your point of view, your mindset? How did you feel?
I think it was a humbling experience, right? Sometimes, especially when we're younger, like we think we just know it all and that things will just kind of fall at our feet, but that's not the case. You kind of have to put in the hard work and put in the time and energy into things to be good at them. So essentially, like that entire experience for me humbled me, and I recognize that I'm not better than anyone else. I'm not smarter than anyone else. Like I'm always willing to learn from my peers, and I'm willing to learn from people that are working jobs that are considered, below me too, because they have a sense, a different perspective that I might be able to learn something from. So having an attitude of always learning and positivity essentially helps you grow in many aspects of your life, not just professionally. So, yeah.
Yeah. Would you say being grateful has also something to do with it?
Yeah, absolutely. Always having gratitude, being grateful for things is important. I mean, there's so much happening in the world, right? And then here we are, I think, in a privileged environment, and that's something to be grateful for as it is. So I'm always grateful for what I have and where I am today, because I look at others and it's a night and day difference. And to me, I'm doing okay. So that's all that matters. Yeah,
Yeah. So we also have to be grateful for the small things in life, right?
absolutely.
So we are in different locations. So I'm in Munich, you're in San Francisco,
Yeah,
and obviously my here it is 8 p.m. and I think
yeah.
something 11 or
11,
maybe
yeah,
11:11.
11:11. Yep.
And what would you say? I mean, your day is kind of yeah, reach lunchtime, right? But
Yeah.
what are you grateful for today so far?
Oh, this coffee.
Oh, this coffee.
I'm so grateful for this coffee. I've been up since 7:45 a.m. Which I know it's not early for a lot of people, but I'm not a morning person, so that's early for me. I had a meeting at 8. And I haven't been able to catch a break since then. So I had 30 minutes before this call and I made myself some coffee, and I'm so grateful for how warm it is and how good it feels and how it's going to energize me for the next 30 minutes. So grateful for
That's
coffee
great.
today.
That's great, and I hope you have a good coffee machine so that the
I
coffee
do. I
really
do. Yeah. I just bought it. So it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
perfect. Maybe let's have a look at a job rotation, right? So you started, as you already mentioned, in TA, right? But back in 2016. Why are you still in TA?
Yeah. So I want to tie this with, I think, one of the first few questions you asked in terms of what drives you. When I first started in TA, this wasn't something that I wanted to do. As I said, I thought this was going to be like a stepping stone to get into the industry, and then I can figure my way out of it and figure out what I want to do next. why I stuck around this long is because I realized that I felt a great sense of gratitude and almost pride too every time I placed a candidate into a role that they wanted to be in. So, looking at talent acquisition from the perspective of helping others, serving others, I think essentially tied it all together for me. And I realized like I actually love what I do. And I want to continue doing that. I think it's a great sense of pride, and especially in today's day and age, where right now, at least in the U.S., like the job market is so turbulent. We just, Meta just laid off a bunch of people. Walmart went through layoffs. Google, etc. Like all these companies are going through layoffs. And I think once job market starts to pick up again, like we are going to be the people that are again helping others land these roles that they no longer were in. And I'm excited for that phase in the next step, right? Because I think that's also going to be an exciting time for our company, for ServiceNow to grow, but also for us to help people and good people come to ServiceNow and get placed in jobs that they love doing. So
Yeah. What
that's why I stuck around.
Yeah, that's also again interesting perspective, right? And it basically aligns or adds on what you already mentioned in the beginning,
Yeah.
right? Maybe another question. So we had a look now at TA in general, right? But why did you join ServiceNow and why are you still there?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting story because I actually hadn't heard of ServiceNow until 2019. Back then, I used to work at Google, and one of my really good friends, who used to be a coworker at that time, and now she's my best friend. Her name is Christy Hewen. Um, she she joined ServiceNow right after she left Google, and at that time, I was working at Gap Inc. And she kept telling me, "You need to come to ServiceNow. You're gonna love it here. Like this is right up your alley. The team is wonderful. The recruiters are amazing. Like you'll really like it." And I kept pushing her off, like, "No, I don't know. Like I'm happy where I'm at. We'll see what happens." And then essentially, when 2020, the pandemic happened, I went through a layer of layoffs as well. And at that point in time, Christy said, "Hey, you know what? There is an opening on my team. Like this is the time for you to join." And I came in, I interviewed, and when I spoke with Mike, who is a senior director here now, he was hiring on his team. I loved him. Like I thought he was so funny, so great at interviewing. Like he asked the right questions. I felt like I was talking to almost like a friend. And for me, that's really important because I'm a people pleaser and a people person. So I don't really like interviews where like you have to be serious and you can't show your personality. That was probably the first interview that I've done in my entire life where I felt like I was able to show my personality. And I think that sealed the deal for me. I thought if people here are able to express themselves this way in serious events like interviews, then I wonder what the company culture would be like. So I joined ServiceNow and I've been here since, and this is the longest I've been with a company. So I must really love it here.
I just want to say, so it speaks for ServiceNow, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Do you remember a question he asked, which still stick with you?
He was we were talking about everyday things. He was like, "Oh yeah, you love hiking? Oh, I've done this hike here and I've done that hike there." Like I remember he wanted to get to know me on a more personal level rather than like qualifications, which he definitely dove into. But the first few questions he led with, and I think the first 15 minutes of our 45-minute interview was like asking about me, what I do, what I love. And that sealed the deal for me. It just felt very humbling and exciting. Like, wow, like he wants to get to know me on a personal level, and then we can dive into the qualifications and see if there's a match. But yeah, I remember he definitely asked me about what kind of hikes I've done around the Bay Area, and we connected on that. So
Yeah, but isn't it interesting? A lot of companies might have something on their website where you would think, okay, this is just a marketing phrase or whatsoever, right? ServiceNow in this case has hungry and humble.
Yeah.
And I would say most of the time people, think about it, or when they think about it, they combine it with business, right? Being hungry,
Hmm.
hungry and humble, personal development, etc., etc., right? But I would like to take a different perspective on it, and you just gave the perfect example. It's about the people. It's about the person. It's about the attitude. I mean,
Hmm.
I would say that hiring for attitude and train for skills fits or suits perfectly here, right?
Yeah.
And that's interesting. And it's
I
interesting when
definitely agree
marketing
with you.
isn't just marketing.
Yeah, yeah. I think here is a great example of living through our marketing slogan, right? Like hungry and humble. When I first joined, that was told to me as well. Like, this is what we strive to be, and this is how the culture here is. But a lot of companies say that. And then when you actually get in, you realize it was all BS. Like, it's not really how the internal politics or whatever works. But I think ServiceNow is a really great example of say it like it is. So hungry and humble really does kind of trickle down into smaller teams, bigger teams, and especially in TA, which is where you and I are. I think we understand that a little bit more, a little bit better. Um, and I think it's a great slogan to actually implement in your personal life too, right? You always want to be hungry, right? You always want to strive for better things and do well for yourself, but you also want to take a moment and have that gratitude for what you have and just kind of humble yourself. And the older I get, the more it makes sense to me why those two things kind of go hand in hand.
So I cannot wait when you're 70, then you are the wisest woman.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah. Then I'll have my own podcast and you can join.
I would be honored. Yeah, but I mean, you're still there. You're still smiling, right? So something, something true has to be there.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Um, Coming back to the job rotation, so we
Yeah.
came up a little bit, but why did you raise interest in that job rotation when it came up?
Yeah.
How? What was your thought process?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious.
I think initially I didn't understand like what the term bungee meant, like you mentioned, right? Because I think at other companies they use a different term. So when I heard the term bungee, I wanted to learn a little bit more about like what does Narissa mean in the email that she sent, where she's like, you're gonna learn about HR and Workday, and you're gonna learn about programs and all these other things. And initially, I just wanted to learn a little bit more about what that meant. But I think in the back of my mind, I knew I was ready at that point in my career to learn new sets of skills and to build on the skills that I already have. Um, I've done recruiting and sourcing for such a long time now that I can kind of do it in my sleep. And I am the type of person that likes to always challenge myself. And I think I work best when I'm fixing a problem that is a little bit difficult, right? Like it involves more like critical thinking. I think that's where my skill set comes in. So when I spoke to Narissa for the first time and she talked me through what the job was going to entail, I got really excited because she said it's all about fixing problems. Like this is all we do. This is what program.
Paradise for you.
Yep. She's like, there's a problem, and my team comes in and we fix it. And she said, you're going to be working with so many different members of different teams, like tech teams, product teams. You're going to be working with security teams. Like you're going to meet a lot of people. And that excited me because working remotely, you don't really get to see a lot of people, meet a lot of people. And I thought this would be a great opportunity for me also to kind of build my network and get to know other people in the company as well. So those things initially for my first conversation with Narissa and with the email that she sent out caught my attention essentially to apply.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? Usually, you would think when you start something like this that you learn a new environment, new skills, etc. Right? But I think isn't it much more interesting what kind of person you are when it's over? I mean, bungee, you're going there, you're coming back. So how did this experience shape you?
Um, I learned to be assertive through this experience, and I think that was the biggest takeaway for me. Narissa is an incredible mentor. I think what I learned from her, aside from just, all the nits and grits about program management, was how confident she is. She goes after what she wants. She doesn't take no for an answer. She's inspiring as a leader, especially as a female leader in this industry. Like, I just felt like, wow, like I was starstruck for the first couple of weeks, like just noticing how she operates and how she works. And she's very assertive and she's not afraid to own who she is and what she wants done. And I was never that person. I think, like I mentioned, people's pleaser, serving others. Like, you don't really think about being assertive and having overconfidence and things of that nature. So I never had those things. And I think what I learned from this bungee experience was, how to get what you want, how to go after what you want, and never take no for an answer. There's always going to be a solution to problems, and if one person is saying no, then the other person will say yes. Like, I learned what these things actually meant when I started working with Narissa. Like, she's never going to take no for an answer, and I love that.
Yeah, so I think I will write my application now for a bungee roll within her team.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was quite
Yeah.
a speech. So what would you say then, after what you just said? What kind of importance did Narissa, or basically a leader with charisma, has on the success of a job rotation per se?
Everything. I think it depends on your mentor. I think it depends on your leader. And, one of the things that my manager at Gap would say to me is like, people don't leave jobs, people leave managers, people leave teams. And that always stuck with me because I realized it's very factual. Like, if you think about anytime you've left a job in the past, like, did you leave because of the company, or did you leave because of who you were under or the team that you were with? Like, and when you start getting down to the details of that, you actually, it makes sense. Like, you're not leaving the company. You're leaving the environment that you're in, and that has a lot to do with the leader that you're under. So having a mentor, a leader that sees you as an individual, that hears you, appreciates you, that recognizes the work that you're doing, but is also good at driving you. And Narissa was really, really great at driving me. Like, there were times when I would doubt myself, and she would say, I know you can do this. And I was like, how do you know? I just started working with you. And she's like, I just know. She's like, this is why I picked you. Like, I know you can do this. And she put that sense of kind of pride in me. Like, I want to make Narissa proud of what I'm doing. And I think that's what drove me as well to do well in the bungee. So everything I think I owe to Narissa based on her mentorship and leadership style. So that's very important at the success of someone who's trying to do a rotation.
Yeah, I would also say, maybe you disagree with me, but let me know your thoughts. When you just mentioned that it all comes down to your mentor per se, right? And there was also a situation where she said to you, you can do this, and this is the reason why I picked you, and so forth, right?
Yeah.
How did you? I mean, she reached your pride, but did you have a time or a moment where you thought, I I don't know, I cannot deal with this, or maybe it's yeah. Can you go a little bit deeper on that? So
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
or
No.
maybe, I'm sorry, maybe I'm going to rephrase it. How long did it take you to realize and accept the comment from her? So to deal with that the right
Yeah.
way,
I
not the
know. I know
negative
what you're asking.
way.
Yeah. I think that's such an interesting point that you brought up. Like, how long did it take for you to actually realize you could do it? Right. Like, and you know what I would say to you? I still don't know if I can answer that question. I still don't know if, like, today my manager came up to me and said, Naksh, I know you can do this. I would still doubt myself. I would be like, can I? Like, are you sure I can handle it? I think that comes down to confidence as well, right? You sometimes you can do something, but when you're presented with a problem, immediately you start thinking about, like, how am I going to fix this? How am I going to solve this? And if you don't have the answers right away, it's okay. And that's what Narissa taught me. Like, it's okay to not know immediately. It's okay to not know a week later. As long as you're working to fix the problem or come up with solutions, you are doing your job. That is exactly what you're meant to do. So I would say I don't know. Like I still don't know if I can do half the things that I'm presented with, the projects that I'm on today. Like, do I know I can complete them all the way? Probably. But do I believe myself in that moment in time? Maybe not. So, but I think that comes down to my personal growth as well. Like, that's kind of my personality. I don't like to overachieve for anything until I know I can get there. Like, I don't like to overpromise things. Um, yeah. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense, and I think it adds, basically to the attitude topic, also, right? So having, being eager and
Hmm.
curious and open-minded, I would say. And I
Yeah.
think
And
also the point you mentioned, what you took from Larissa also is that it's okay that you don't know at the
yeah.
moment, right, the
Yeah.
answer or the solution, but work on the solution. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really great comment. Um, I'm also wondering, so did you experience patterns which you had to break in order to be successful in the new role?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I noticed from the start with Narissa's program team is when someone would tell me, like partners, right? We would have product teams, security teams, tech teams working with us throughout the project lifetime. And when someone would tell me, "Oh, sorry, we don't know or we couldn't figure this out," I would say, "Okay, no problem. Like, I'll catch up with you next week and we'll go from there." And I would come back and tell Narissa, so and so told me that they couldn't figure it out, and she said, "Did you probe further? Did you ask why? Did you figure out a solution? Did you try to work with them to get to the bottom of the actual issue?" I was like, "No, they just told me no, and I took that and I came to you." She said, "You
Mm.
never do that. Like, your job is to fix the problem. And if there's a problem, you come in and you fix it." So I learned that I was just very passive in the way that I was handling those meetings initially. And, I think I've been like that my entire professional career. Like, if I'm like a passive person naturally, right? So I learned I had to break the patterns there. I had to be a little bit more, okay, we're going to figure this out together. You might not know what you're doing today, but I'm going to help you figure it out. You're going to help me figure it out, and we're going to do this together. I think having that mentality of like telling your business partners, you and I are on the same team, is important. So I had to get out of that mentality where it was like me versus them. It was, we're partners, we're going to do this together. So I had to implement those changes in my meetings in order to get things done. So I had to identify those patterns very early on, because every time I would come back to Narissa, she'd be like, "No, I don't want to. I don't want to hear that next time. Like, you really have to get to the bottom of things." So yeah.
Yeah. No, I think I really like this example because
Yeah.
you can relate that to a lot of situations,
Mhm.
besides within the job rotation, right?
Yeah.
Not taking no for an answer, or Also here it is again with the. I mean, it also takes courage, right, to self-reflect, to see the patterns you have, and
Yeah.
also not to judge yourself. I think
Yeah.
that's a very important point, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think you kind of nailed it there. Like, not to be hard on yourself and take the learning as it comes, because I didn't know what I was doing, and that was the whole point. I had to learn. And that's the whole concept of a rotation and a bungee, is like, you're gonna come in, you're not gonna know all the answers, and that's why you're there to learn it.
Yeah. Maybe let's have another different perspective on it. So we scratched it already a little bit, or mentioned it. Personal development, right? So job
Mhm.
rotation in regards to personal development. What does success in the job rotation role, from the perspective of personal development, mean to you?
Yeah, I think personally for me, I've touched on a few of these points, but I went into this knowing from other folks, because I did my research too, right? Like when I spoke with Narissa, initially I didn't know who she was, or I just didn't know her leadership style at that point. So I had a few conversations with people that have been at ServiceNow a long time, that also have worked with her in the past. And I had a few conversations with people, and I said, what am I dealing with? Like, how does she like to operate? How does she like to work? And a lot of people mentioned, she's a go-getter. She has like that hunter mentality, and she just knows how to get the job done. And she's very assertive, and she's very confident, and she's hardworking. And if you do this rotation, just be prepared to face these types of personality traits from her. And initially that kind of like set me back a little bit, because the mentors I've had in the past are, I wouldn't say they're as, what's the right word here? I'm trying to say the right word. I wouldn't say they are as hyper focused on like getting the job done as Narissa is, because Narissa likes to get things done immediately. So initially that was a transition for me. Personally, as personal growth, I learned by working with her and by working on the rotation that the only way to kind of get things done around ServiceNow, especially at ServiceNow, is by being on top of things, by putting yourself out there, by having a timeline on things. Timeline is very important, and I think that was probably the biggest takeaway for me, was having some sort of a date to get things done. If you don't set a date, people forget what they're doing, they don't complete tasks on time, and your project that's supposed to go live on a certain date is going to get pushed back. And because in this space, Christian, you were communicating the timeline with the leaders, you don't want to go back on that timeline. So, and I think I've kind of learned that in my personal life as well. Like, for example, goal setting, right? Like before I would say, this year, I want to do this, this, and that, but I would never set a timeline on my goals. So they would just kind of merge into the next year and the following year. It helped me realize that for me personally, that's something that's going to be very important. Like I need to know like a fixed date of when things are going to get done. If I want to buy something, like I need to buy at this date. If I want to pay a bill, like I need to know, like it needs to be on this date. So these things are important. So I think having a sense of time and understanding of time is important. So that was probably the takeaway on the personal growth side of things.
Yeah. Basically two things, which feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, right? But the first thing, due diligence. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a really great point, and not just within this context, but in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
To make sure how can I get ahead of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you did your due diligence with Narissa in this case, and you also mentioned it because I was wondering. I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, but she does have certain characteristics which you don't have or didn't have at this
Mm-hmm.
point of time,
Yeah.
right? And you mentioned it put you a little bit back, or you were kind of, okay, is it really something I want to pursue, right? So am I afraid, or how I'm going to
Yeah.
deal with that? And yeah, I'm glad you did it, because it takes courage again, right? To be proactive with
Mm-hmm.
basically your personal development, right? And
Yeah.
coming back to the second point you made, timeline, so sense of time and so forth. And this is I mean, the example you gave with the goal setting, I think a lot of people can relate to that. And I think you had a good boot camp.
Yeah, it was a great boot camp. And I just want to say, like, you're a really great listener, because I felt like you understood what I was trying to say, even though I probably didn't say in the most proactive way, but you caught my points better than I was able to explain them. I think that was beautiful the way you said Narissa was different than you. And I think that's what you kind of liked about her. That's exactly right. Like her style is just different from mine. And I was afraid of that initially. Like, would I be able to match that energy and work well with her? But I think through this experience, I learned that, as long as the mutual respect is there, you can kind of work with anybody and learn from
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. No, that's really great. Um, Would you do it again?
Yeah, in a heartbeat. I want to work on her team. I've told her already. I said if there's an opening, there's headcount. Like, hey, don't forget me. Yeah, I would. I think 100% I would do it again. It's just it's so much. You feel amazing when a project goes live. Like I worked on a security workday project, and that project took 6-7 months from initiation to completion. And I came in month 2 of that project. So Narissa was already working on it. It was in the early stages, and then she brought me on it. And when we went live right before the winter holidays, I felt like I was on top of the world, right? Like I just felt like I was helping our company. We fixed a problem that a lot of recruiters are facing in terms of eligibility. And it was a successful project. Like we got positive feedback from recruiters, and nothing feels better than helping others and helping, even if I'm helping the recruiters save 30 seconds of their time, I think it adds up. So that project was extremely fulfilling for me.
Yeah, I think I can speak for everyone who's listening or watching this conversation. We really can feel the passion and the intrinsic motivation for serving, right? So keep that.
Yeah.
That's very very great. I'm wondering, so you're coming from a different focus within the TA space, right? Where I would say it's a more the shorter cycle, right? How was it for you then having a cycle which took 6-7 months?
It was interesting. So I think I was kind of used to that as well, just because I've done executive recruiting in the past. And with executive recruiting, it just the life cycle is longer. So 4 to 6 months you're looking at for an offer. So in that regard, I think the timeline I was okay with. But I think when you actually started to go through the motions of what that feels like, that was difficult for me because there's lulls between, right? So there would be weeks in between where I was just waiting for people to get stuff done. And those weeks were especially difficult because you're kind of like in that gray area where so and so has a deadline in a week from now. And so you don't really know what they're doing in that week. So what I would do is just check in. Hey, just want to make sure like we're on track for next Tuesday. Like, do you think you're going to have this done by then? So I would just do check-ins with people during those weeks. But yeah, I think the timeline piece for someone that isn't used to long-term completion of things might be a little bit difficult, but I think for me it was okay just because of my experience in the exec world.
Yeah, yeah. So I haven't done this experience. So if I will,
Mm.
so I will let you know how it went for
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
But so when maybe going back to the start of your job rotation journey, right? So what were your thoughts, or how did you feel when you did get the notification or the information that you were selected?
I was ecstatic. I remember Nursa said, "Can I talk to you for 15 minutes? It'll be quick." And I thought she was just gonna let me know that she went with some other candidates. So I was kind of prepared for that. But she told me that I was selected, and I was the first person in the company to have done a bungee. And I was like, "What, me?" Like, are
You
you
in the
sure?
history of service now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it felt amazing. I was just grateful for ServiceNow to provide an opportunity like this, right? We're growing so quickly as a company, and we're figuring things out as we go. We're not perfect, and I think we recognize that. So with this rotation, I was just grateful that there was an opportunity to learn something different. Like I didn't have to leave the company and do another job to figure this out. Like this was within my
Mm.
company that I got to experience. So I I felt ecstatic. I felt grateful, and I was excited to just get started. I was like, just give me the work. Let me get my hands and feet dirty, and let's see what we can come up with. So, yeah, over the moon, I would say.
And this is also just another great example of not just praying or praising marketing stuff, right? But really having the mindset and understanding of hire for attitude and train for skills, right? I
Mhm.
mean, of course, every role and job up to a certain extent, right? But having this in general, I think this is, yeah, and the job rotation is just one example.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we're continuing to do that, right? Like now you see there's 5 other rotations that have come out. The EIC team has a few rotations. Narissa's team has other rotations. Like now we're on a trend. So I think the more people learn about it, the more people do bungees, it's going to become an integral part of learning at ServiceNow. So, and I think that's important because, you know, sometimes people just want to try something different, and a lot of the times that requires you to leave a company. So this is giving us an experience, an opportunity to learn within, and I think that's very important for company morale and employee experience overall.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you on that one. And yeah, so you mentioned you were over the moon, right? So
Mhm.
how long was it from getting the information to start the bungee roll?
It
How
was
much time did you have?
about 2 to 3 weeks, 2 weeks, I think 2 weeks, yeah, from the day that Narissa told me. And
Yeah.
then I had a transitional period where I was just delegating my responsibilities to the person that was taking over my role. And then 2 weeks later, I started on Narissa's team.
So you had 2 or 3 weeks, right? So how did you prepare yourself for the role?
Yeah. So this came at a time when things were really busy still. So I would say that I didn't have that much downtime to actually prepare myself for the role. I actually prepared myself in the first month because in the first month I was onboarding and there were a lot of documents and trainings that I was required to do. So I think that helped me train. But in the 2 weeks that were leading up to this, I was really busy. I was still working on my recs and helping this other person on board on my position. So my time really wasn't dedicated to preparing for Narissa's rotation program. But I think mentally, I was just like excited about the challenge. And I kept reminding myself, like, you're going to learn something new. You're going to like touch a different territory. And that made me really excited about the future.
Yeah. This adds basically to the next question. Did you have thoughts that taking the job rotation role would backfire in some way?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think my first reservation was, would I be good at this? Like, would I be successful at this? Would my skills transition into this world well? Or would this be an absolute nightmare where I don't know what I'm doing and I can't figure it out and it's just not for me? So I think those were initial thoughts. And then my other reservations were, would I have my role still? If I didn't like what I was doing here, would I be able to come back to my previous role? And in what capacity? Because like I said, there was another person that was coming into my role and helping my team, kind of doing my recs. So those things initially made me very apprehensive and just a little bit um, scared of the possibility of what could happen in the future. And then when the job market completely froze and we had a hiring freeze within the company, like I was really afraid then as well. Like what's going to happen now? And you know, would I be let go? So like those things were definitely going through my mind, and I was like, oh, maybe this was a
Hmm.
mistake. So, then I had a conversation with nurse, and she reassured me that everything would be okay, and she was right so far. So
So, but you're not in your old role, right? You're not
so
back in your old role.
yeah, I'm back on my old team, but I'm not doing my old work anymore. I'm doing more special projects now. So I'm using what I've learned with Narissa and on the programs team into what my team currently does. So working on, again, process improvement, you know, data integration, things like that. Like I'm working on.
Yeah. So basically, the job rotation experience, yeah, opened new doors for you, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
would you recommending the job rotation basically to anyone?
I think, yeah, absolutely. Especially if you have the desire to learn. I think it just comes down to your desire, right? If you can pick up new skills and you can adapt quickly to changes and environments, and that is something that will work for you. If you're somebody that likes a challenge, like fixing things, problems, critical thinking, but also working with many, many different types of people, you're gonna love it. So just kind of knowing who you are as a person, where you want to take your career, having those conversations with yourself honestly is important first before you take the jump to do something like this. Because it is like
Yeah.
a roller coaster, like you're going to doubt yourself initially. You're not going to know if you can do this. Then you come to a stage where things are going well. Then there's a problem. And then you're like, I don't know if I can do this. So it's kind of like a roller coaster of emotions because it's a new territory for you.
Yeah. But isn't it great, or maybe, or basically from my point of view, personal development is aligned with a roller coaster. So without
Yeah.
a roller coaster curve of emotions, for example,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have any personal development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe last question regarding the job rotation topic. When the time has come to an end, what were your last yeah sentences to Narissa? How did you kind of end the partnership in this context?
I think I told her I don't want to leave. I said, "Why are you making me leave?" um, I was just very grateful. I was really grateful for everything that she's taught me. She spent many, many hours just mentoring me, and she's an extremely, extremely busy person. If you ever look at her calendar, she's booked from 6 a.m. to like 6 p.m. And there were days that I actually worked with her on a Sunday evening because we had teams in India that we were discussing projects with. So she's very dedicated to her job. Um, I told her that, I would be back on her team in a heartbeat. And I was extremely grateful for the effort that she put into mentoring me. And if there was ever an opening on her team, like, please think of me. And she said, likewise, like, if you see something on my team, apply. I said, I will. So we had we had very honest
Your
conversations.
mistake, you offered this opportunity.
So we had very honest conversations in that regard. So yeah.
Perfect, perfect. Maybe for the end, or almost for the end, self awareness, self reflection,
Hmm.
mental health, recharging, and purpose. Buzzword bingo or what?
Um, yeah, I mean, all of those run true to the culture here at Service Now, right? Like mental health is very important. Um, Self-reflection, I think, is very critical as well. And I think I did a lot of that in my 6 months on the bungee. But I think generally speaking, like self-reflection is very important in terms of personal growth and professional growth as well.
Yeah. No, with being that said, so thank you for sharing your thoughts regarding
Yeah,
those words and basically sharing your perspective.
absolutely.
Thank you for your time. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it. So the last question is for you. Anything you want to mention we didn't cover? The last words over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I had such a fantastic time just kind of talking through my experience, and you're a wonderful host and understanding what I was trying to say and listening. So I appreciate that. I think in terms of like last words, I would encourage anyone out there that has doubts in themselves or like is trying to figure out if something is meant for them is to take the leap of faith, right? Like it's actually to kind of get yourself in there and figure it out as you go. Sometimes we have a lot of self doubt, and I'm a perfect example of what that looks like. but you don't really know what you're made of until you're in these difficult trenches, right? Until you're faced with adversities, until you're faced with difficult problems, you really don't know what you are capable of. So if you are comfortable in your current role, that probably means it's time to move on and do something different and challenging. So if you're having those doubts today, then I would encourage you to step outside of your comfort zone and learn something new.
Yeah, and I'm pumped up. I will book a conversation with my manager straight away. So thank you for your time, Naksh, and greetings from Munich.
Good evening. Thank you.